without further ado, Nicole had good luck. Nicole and I, as I say, have known each other for 20 some odd years. She used to be part of a group called Usual Suspects. There's some usual suspects around. It's a group of people who got their PhDs and such at Duke at a certain time. Then you lived in New York. I don't know. That was crazy. That's all in there. I know. But anyway, that's how we know each other. And she has a PhD, but she also gets her fingers dirty. So come on in. All right. Thank you. I said this last time we were here, but like it is non-trivial to put together a presentation and present it to a bunch of strangers. So thank you very much to both of our presenters.
Thank you for the introduction. So I am going to try my best to stay to time and give you guys a little bit of an overview about what we mean by farm and how we ended up getting into the farming business. So just very briefly what we are a family of three. It's myself, my husband, who I will call Farmer Mike, and our daughter Lillian, who is 11. With help from his parents and his sister periodically on basically farming a 5-acre pasture and truly only farming about a quarter of an acre of that in a market garden. We also have some chickens and we have fruit trees. And so we're growing vegetables, fruit, chicken eggs, flowers, and recently doing some pottery using clay from the holes that we did and crops that failed because they don't clay. So what I wanted to do is kind of break this story down into 3 segments and kind of tell the story of the part where we weren't farming, and then the part where we were almost farming, where things get kind of exciting and weird, and then finally the part where we were farming. And I'm gonna go ahead and give Mike the little out here that this is told from mostly my perspective. So the timeline is Nicole's timeline, but Mike has been actively in the middle of that timeline, mostly almost farming and the farming part. Okay. So just to zoom in on the not farming part, it started in 1971 in Rochester, where in Rochester, and then progressed through Fredonia, New York, which incidentally is 20 miles away from the Chautauqua Institute in New York State. And so I often, at Fredonia State, would kind of hear like little inklings of the Institute, and that sounds interesting, and then I was busy, so I never went. But anyway, then I came to North Carolina, and then went to New York City. And what I will kind of expound upon is in none of those cases was I farming. I did not have really free access to dirt, and I was busy doing other stuff. But during the initial part of not farming in Rochester, my mother did farm. Essentially, she didn't really, she gardened. There was a very big garden in our backyard.
Very big garden.
Yeah, exactly. There's a swimming pool right here, which my brother and I like guarded very jealously because she was constantly looking to get that into. Like, but she like sort of matter of factly grew all of the vegetables that we ate and filled our freezer and canned everything. And it didn't even occur to me that this isn't how people live. This was just what we did. Now she also never really let us in the garden because we were annoying. And she actually was quite good at it, and she had some serious business going on in there, so she didn't need us trampling around. But she would let, I remember helping plant the corn. I always loved that because it was kind of great when it was starting to get warm after, after spring, after school let out, and I got to go out and help her plant the corn. We also went in there when she said no snacking, and we knew where the cherry tomatoes were and where the green beans were. So we snacked. Now, I also, since she wouldn't let me garden, my main hobby growing up, this comes back later, or you might have caught it in the first slide, but was catching toads. This was my favorite thing. I love toads. This has been going on for a long time. My mother recently shared with our daughter a book that I had filled in when I was in 5th grade, and in there is some evidence that although I was not allowed in the garden, I had been thinking about farming. What you can see, the zoom in here says when I grow up, I might be a farmer, a scientist, or someone who uses a computer.
Really unique, Nicole.
It is startlingly prophetic. I knew things. And so, yeah, so it turns turns out these are not a mutually exclusive set of things, and in fact, all of those things have happened. So go little me. So after I left Rochester, like I said, I went to Fredonia. I studied biology, and that was probably my favorite biology time. That program was amazing. I was just so happy to be able to take classes on things that I was excited about. I was in some really great ecology classes, and really kind of got sucked into the gene editing sort of side of things because it was sexier. But I look back now, I'm like, you were happier on the ecology stuff also, so foreshadowing. I then went to North Carolina to study microbiology and molecular biology, and so that's Sam alluded to, where I started running into many of the folks in the room that I know here. But that was, in my opinion, starting to be questionable biology. It was one protein for 4 years in a row, and I didn't feel like biology. And it was not feeling like biology enough that I rapidly sold out, moved to New York City, joined a consulting firm working for the pharma industry, and that's where I was for the next 10 years. Definitely not doing biology, and not having access to dirt. So the almost farming part finally happens. In 2010, I moved back to North Carolina, and at this point, access to dirt, some serious motivation, community, education, and experience. Like I said, it gets hectic for this next few years. So when I moved back, I bought a house in Watts Hillendale that had a yard with dirt, and I was pretty excited about it at this point. And there wasn't a lot of sun. There were like patches of sun, including this pathetic little patch up in the very front yard, right by the street where I planted 2 rows of corn. And I was so excited about it. There are people in this room who know about it because they were like, yeah, we get it, Nicole, you planted corn. That's super cool. No, but it's in the front yard, and now it's growing, and there's corns on it. And I'm like, yeah, that's how that works. That's great. And so to the extent that this same year, and I know this because I met Farmer Mike. We actually met online, and I was drawn to his profile because he mentioned gardening. And in my mind, I'm like, this is excellent. I am growing corn in my front yard. This guy is a sure thing. And so he was like less enthused about that. Like, I'm like, how is this not like done? Like, why am I still like having to put on outfits and stuff? Now I finally bring him around, and eventually Lillian comes into the picture. Yeah, and so at the same time, I'm now kind of living a little bit more of a balanced life. I'm not as consumed by my consulting work, and I'm starting to lift my head and pay attention to what's actually going on in the world. And I'm starting to really get my head around what's going on with climate change, what's going on with loss of biodiversity, the destructive role of big agriculture and how it plays into that, and the loss of local food sovereignty. These are all things I'm starting to really kind of get interested and pay attention to, and the importance of them is ratcheted up as these two become part of my life. And I'm kind of in a place at the end of this stage of almost farming where I'm really feeling kind of trapped in the suburbs, not knowing how I'm supposed to be helping to fix this stuff. And so it's at this point that we go on a family date to the downtown library here, and Mike has got Lily in there off breaking pottery, and she's tripping over stuff and throwing books down the stairs and whatever, and I like sneak off to the garden section, or the farming section, without any real agenda. I'm just kind of wandering through the stacks looking for interesting stuff. And I find 2 books that basically are a little bit of a turning point. I don't know who here knows Wendell Berry. Yeah. I did not know about him at this point. And so I pick up this book because I'm like, it's cute cover and it's about farming. And then I pick up Gene Lobson because it was right next to it. And these are both essay books written by 2 guys who are, well, you guys know, like these really devoted Midwestern small family farmers. And they talk a lot and really compellingly about the importance of maintaining the small farm as a part of a way of life, as a part of a way of supporting our country, and the tragedies that are going on as we lose farmers from these small farms to the large agro-industrial complex, and the ripple effects of that, not just on our food security, not just on the quality of our food, but the ability of ourselves to maintain nature, and frankly on the society at large. They talk a lot about just the destruction of small towns in the Midwest and everything that stems from losing this small family farmer. they talk really compellingly about the economics of the small family farm, and it's not a capitalist economy. It's an economy that has to do with being intertwined with nature and truly being respectful and understanding of the resources, creating a circular sort of economy, and bringing the human beings who are working on that farm into that equation. And it was all like, it just boomed, like straight through me. And at this point, Mike doesn't know it yet, but it's done. Like, yeah. And so I realized, like, this is, like, having read this, having had my eyes open, like, that's the only way I can envision trying to live. And so I start getting as involved as I can in all the different things that I think could help us figure out how we might do something different to move towards that sort of a vision. And so I start getting involved in the community. I joined a group that's no longer around, but the people who were in it and the works that we're doing are still, as Durham does, kind of around and still doing good works, Durham Farm Board. I joined the Farmland Advisory Board. I'm still there. I start seeking out different educational opportunities. If you really want to get yourself into trouble in this vein, go to the Sustainable Agricultural Conference that comes to Durham every year through the CFSA, and you will also be in trouble, as I said. Mike and I took a class at Orange County. They don't do it anymore. It's called the Plant Program. It was every Thursday for 3 hours for a bunch of time, and we learned so much. It was really amazing. That was formative, and tons of books. And then finally took a year off from the consulting gig and kind of switched gears because I was traveling all the time during this as well. And so I kind of put a stop to that. And during that year off, I did some volunteering. Your Street Learning Garden. That's a beautiful place. It's over on the corner of Gear and Roxburgh. And Funny Girl Farm. I did a bunch of volunteering with them. And then Perkin Meadows. I actually worked there. I was earning a paycheck. And I learned a ton during those experiences. So I finally now am, well, let me back up. So I'm learning all this stuff, and I'm now like realizing that I would like to actually do it and buy a property. And so I'm convincing Mike that we can go and look at some properties for fun, kind of like just go and explore what Durham County and stuff has. And so I start trying to figure out, part of what I've been doing here is trying to figure out who knows who has farms. Like, how do you get a farm? Who's got farmland? How do you get your hands on it? And anyone here have a guess on how you get farmland around here? This is important. It plays into the whole argument of the problem of losing all our farmers is that they walk off their land and then they it's really hard to get back on the farmland once you let it out of the family. So I had assumed, I'm like, there's got to be some like sort of secret like club where they've got a clearinghouse of farmland, or like there's farmers who are looking to get rid of their farm and they'll just want to be excited that you want to take it. They'll be like, that's so great, here you go. But there's not. And so what we ended up doing, although there's efforts to be better about this, what we ended up doing is going to a realtor, same as you would to say buy a house. Basically, we ended up starting to pick through all the usual websites, looking for anything that had property of 10 acres, between 10 and 20 acres, and then going and seeing a bunch of stuff. We went through a number of realtors who understood the assignment, or I should say a number of realtors who did not understand the assignment, and then we found one who was really good, and she was willing to answer or help us get answers to all the weird questions you have to ask when you're looking for farmland, because a lot of them are on wells, so you need to know, is it well water, is there a flow rate that supports a farm, can you put a house on it, will it work, all this stuff. You have to like kind of figure out all these answers before you know whether something's going to work for you. And so we probably had gone to 6 properties at this point. And I know I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to tell the story. Anyway, Mike, I had one property that I was super excited about. It was 40 acres, which was higher than we wanted, but it was cleared land and it had fences already and it had a 100-year-old farmhouse on it. And it was only about 30 minutes up the road or 25 minutes up the road, and I was super excited about it. And I was like yelling at Mike the night before. I'm like, Mike, I have a good feeling about this one for tomorrow. I said, I swear, if it's not haunted or filled with snakes, this is the one. And so we go out there, and this is the realtor who's not good. She shows up in high heels, and she's like, stuck in the like, I want to walk the fences. And I'm like, now I'm definitely doing it because I told you we were doing this, and you show up in high heels. So here we go. So we walk the field, but she doesn't know any of the answers. But we get into the house, and the house is decrepit. And this is the balance, because you're buying land in a house, we gotta live there, and so it's already at the top of our budget, and the house is a completely new one. Like, oh my, this is gonna be tricky, but we can do it, because it's beautiful. And we get inside, and it's creepy as could be. I mean, it looks like just an unhappy place, and we're upstairs in this one bedroom, and it's got like all the old mattresses piled in the back and garbage, and like the walls have kind of been, there's leaks and stuff's on the ground, and Mike's standing there pointing at the ground. I'm like, what is it here? He's like, snake skins. So we get outside and we get in the car. He's like, also, I'm pretty sure this is the house. There was a murder-suicide here about 3 years ago. I'm like, haunted and snakes. We passed on that one. And thankfully, the farm we're currently on came finally across our path shortly thereafter. And so we went to this place, and it was it was 5 acres of cleared horse pasture with tree lot all around it. It had a cabin on it which was not livable, and it had a barn, and it had a trailer, and it had some room in the budget for us to eventually build. So in the course of, in all those emails stricken yesterday that was on the previous page, in the course of like 7 days, we went from like, it's really pretty, wouldn't it be fun, to signing on the dotted line. Wow. Because the realtor's like, oh, they just got 2 bids and they're calling for bids, and it has to happen. And I was sitting with Sarah actually at Parker Notice when that note came across. And Sarah, what am I gonna do? I don't know. She's like, well, how would you feel if someone else got it? And I'm like, really, really bad. She's like, then we need to put an offer in. And so it felt super crazy. And Mike was really supportive and didn't act like it was as crazy as it was, but it felt super crazy. So we put hit the farm, and so now we're farming. Now it's 2018, and we're not living on the farm because there's not a house yet, but we're driving back and forth every single weekend and staying camping out in the cabin and spending a lot of time walking around the land. And finally, that fall, we start getting the space prepared, and so here we are putting a bunch of leaves onto the footprint, and then we rototilled and we rototilled and we rototilled. We don't have, and still to this day don't have a proper tractor. Someone finally took mercy on us. A friend of ours came over with a garden tractor with like this ridiculous, just a single whatever
Blade.
Yeah, single blade hoe or plow. There's a word for it, I'm blanking on it. And he almost flipped over his tractor like 3 or 4 times because it's like, this was hard clay. But he kind of, you can see where he was able to flip that. And so, because Mike went out first and he was rototilling, it was like cutting little grass is basically what it was doing. It was not going any further. So, there was a lot of rototilling. I broke it!
Oh, Joe did the rest of it.
Yeah, Joe.
We have a technological.
He's a software guy.
Yeah.
I swiped
Self-described.
with
He's a genius.
It's okay, he fixed it. Alright, so yes, rototilling, and then there was I love this. She's like, oh, damn it. And she was helping with digging, and there was lots of setting up new roads. And so I'm gonna just quickly buzz through, like that was a lot of work, and then the learning curve stuff came. And there was a lot that we had to learn in quick succession to get ourselves to market. Trying to figure out what sort of infrastructure to get. The advice we got, and that we have stuck to as best we can, is stay as small as you can, stick to just the very basics. For us, that was that rototiller. This is a scuffle hoe. This is the one thing you really need. Like you just go out and you just scuffle the weeds, and then a nice sharp hoe to pull a row and get seeds in. Deer fence was critical. We started off with a really basic, just 10-foot T-posts with 4-foot woven wire around the base and tensile wire around the top. It was real rickety, and it lasted us an infuriating entranceway. Like it was just pivoting on the fence itself, like just on the woven wire. And there was a hole in the ground that we would drop the T-post in, and then we would swing it back, and it would fall on the ground and get tangled up. And we did that for like 5 years. So finally, we now have a proper grown-up deer fence, which I'll show you. You know, irrigation, which is sideways, was another big thing that it wouldn't happen if I didn't have an automated irrigation system out there. And then we finally have put in a few hoop houses, and that really helps for us to be able to extend our season. We had to learn all the different plants. I didn't know any of it, and so it was like complete fire hose stuff, trying to figure out all the different plant families, when in the season they can be planted, which ones are frost resilient and frost sensitive, and figuring out. I have a giant spreadsheet. I almost showed it, but I'm like, no, I don't need to see that. But I knew you would appreciate it. And I will tell you, the Johnny Seeds catalog is an outstanding place to go. That was the resource I used to fill in all my data for how long things grow. I had it was real intricate. But I needed to do that to be able to learn this stuff. I don't use it anymore, but I had to really study the heck out of it to get off the curve. Then there's all the stuff of setting up a business. It was basically setting up an LLC, but with a couple extra things, really trying to pay attention to risk, insurance, and so on and so forth, to make sure that we were ready to have a farm business, which includes figuring out where you're going to sell. So we sell at farmers markets, smaller ones, and it was what saved our bacon from a sanity standpoint, because we could do pickups on the farm, so we got to see people through the whole pandemic. We could set the bag down and stand and talk for 45 minutes, people were nervous about the food supply and the supply chain, and it was really exciting to be able to be helpful in that way. We're now in a new market called the North Durham Farmers Market. It just started up this past year. It is really fun. It is an eclectic group of farmers and artists. It meets in the afternoons on Saturdays, and we will have information about that on our Instagram and website. But it's been a really fun place to market. So where are we 7 years later? So we started farming in 2018. We're about to start our 8th year. So this is a satellite shot of the 5 acres. This is the 1/4 acre I was talking to you about in various stages of the garden. We've got a hoop house here where we grow our winter greens, and then in the summer tomatoes and cucumbers. Flower house where we grow our flowers so we can get flowers going by April. This is a propagation house where I can start my seedlings. That's been a bit of a game changer. Although I was really good at getting a whole bunch of seedlings planted, and then getting them into the garden is always the bottleneck. So many a seedling perished this year, but this year's gonna be different. Apple trees all through here. Some berries over here. Some really lovely fig trees here. Peaches and plums, more apples and pears. These are chevrons of native trees. The idea being that it captures, this is all a hill flowing down, it captures water as it flows down. We've got some native fruits and some pecans, native nuts, and flowers. And the idea would be too that in the future, if we wanted to get sheep out here, which is kind of a long con, not a full on mic, you could just run fencing along these chevrons and cut it off, and you would have rotational grazing ready to go. So that's
you should do it.
yeah. I don't think it would be a problem. I think they take care of themselves. So anyways, here is some farm corn. These are some of the things over here. I'm obsessed with corn. If I ever get invited back, I'll do a corn one. I'm obsessed. Here's the eggs. They're very multicolored, and that's fun. Here's an eggplant that was waving hello, which I thought was probably important to include. Sometimes for cover crop, I like to grow wheat or oats, and I'm always like really mesmerized by how pretty it is. It ends up in my flower arrangements, and then I'm always like mesmerized with the power of it. I'm like, we could make flour. We just had 17 more hours in a week. What do you think? But we could if we had to. Here's some baby chickens. So there's that. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up now. The things that we've learned. I do not like the heat, which turned out to be something I should have thought through before. I learned in one of those jobs that when I was working for that one farm. First of all, the people who were there, they're like, "No, wait, you're how old and you're farming? Wait, you left your job to do this?" And I'm like picking tomatoes in the field with this lady. I'm like, "Yeah, that's great." And she's like, "Well, you know the rule: no making farm decisions in July." Because it sucks in July and everybody would sell their farms for sure. So that was, Mike has to remind me of that every July, August, and September. There's an invasive aunt that has come in North Carolina that maybe just lives at my farm, but it's definitely there. It's called the Asian needle ant, and it bites me every year, all the time, and I hate it. Toads are drawn to headlamps. If you, in the springtime and in the fall, when I'm out there trying to push it to plant, I'm out there with my headlamp on, and they like come out and they like are mesmerized by the light, and then they just stop in the pathway and stare at me. And so it's like a big standoff because I love them, and so it's hard for me to get work done with that. Three sisters growing is a revelation if you get the timing right. Like I've always said, I don't know if that works so great. We had the best three sisters planting this year, and it made me so happy because the weeds were kept down by the squashes like it's supposed to be, and everybody grew, and there's tons of food. Part-time farming has value other than money. Its value actually must be very other than money. We don't make money. We are actually, I'm excited to report we cover our expenses. And you know, I think about why we started this. I think in my mind I was like, a retirement plan. This will be a good thing. I can retire early and do this. And that's not the case. But I have kept my sanity, and I have been very excited to be able to participate in the community in a way I never would have. Mike and I are both introverts, and so we need something to do in order to trick ourselves into interacting with folks and to have it not be so, anyway, it's been a way to be involved in the community that I wouldn't have been able to do for myself. So I'm really grateful for it. And then just, all of the other reasons that I started with have been true. That we grow our own food, and that's wonderful. We share the food, and it makes me happy. And when things are feeling crazy like they are now, I feel some sense of security knowing that we have something that can help us be secure, that we can share with people that might help them too. So we're going to keep going. We're always looking for ways to be more efficient. There's a couple mantras on the farm, one of which is, I mean, no decisions in July, but every year I'm like, Mike, this is it. This is the thing. This is a game changer. It's like, that's great. I'm so excited that we have a game changer. It's super. This is like the 7th game changer here. But he mows all the lawn in that pasture, and we got a grass sweeper, and so we've got tons of grass, and I can use it in the pathways, which is great, but you gotta have time to get it there, and then also the wolves like it. But anyways, there's always game changers and things that we're working on to try to streamline. And one of the things I think I really hope we find a way to do more of this year is on-farm community building, maybe doing a class about corn, I don't know, or just doing pickups again on the farm. Let's see. I guess that's probably where I'll leave it. I will say that we continue to learn and explore. Part of the fun is just always having something new to try. And so there may be ducks getting added to the rotation this year. I already mentioned the sheep. Mike knows all about it. And sometimes I daydream about basket weaving here. We plant these willows.
It was such a great talk, and I think, I don't know how many people here have a secret dream of somehow being involved in farming. That's
Big garden.
Big garden now. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. It's about 50%. Yeah, a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? Where's the TikTok? But for those of you who want to ask questions, yeah, Adam.
Two questions.
Yeah.
My wife and I think about this a lot.
Yeah.
Where is your mother in all of this, if you don't mind answering?
Yeah, she is still in Rochester, and actually one of the things that sucks right now is my dad has dementia and my mother has stopped gardening. And it is not good. Like,
For her.
For her. Like, I feel like I was always looking at her being like, you're going to live forever because you are out there and you're gardening. Rochester's a tough place to garden. She starts getting those catalogs in February.
Has she seen your farm?
She has, and they haven't been able to come back in about 3 years, so, 4 years now. But I think she's excited. She thinks it's funny. She thinks it's bizarre to her / almost offensive that we take our food and sell it at a farmer's market and that it's costing what it costs at a farmer's market. But
The second question I have is this an activity intended for profit or long term, or is it really just about sustainability, so self-preservation, self-sustenance?
so my suspicion is it will never be truly for profitability. because it would require us to change the business model in ways that we don't want to change the business model. I don't think we wanna have necessarily a ton of on-farm stuff, like we would with maybe Swiss German pig, for instance, 'cause, there's different ways we could make more money on this for sure, that we've decided against because it's more, there's other things of value to us that we wanna maintain. I will say, because we're working full-time, we are absolutely not out there as much as we would need to be to make it profitable, as a market garden. There are people who kill it, so that is to say, they do make it profitable, they do make money on this, they hire people, they provide a lot of value to the community by doing so, and they are extremely talented and very focused people, and they are full-time. It can be done, but it requires, some real skill, and I don't think that, where we are, we probably won't get there. Yeah.
Carl?
Comment and a question.
Yeah.
Comment is, I've always loved your emails, your weekly. Those bomb, I printed out them and saved them because they're so funny.
Do you save the one of the toad in the hole?
The toad, I don't remember that, maybe you can tell it afterwards.
Yeah.
My question is, given your current, yield, could you survive the zombie apocalypse?
Yeah, so I think we'd have to be more focused, but I do think we could, but only until the zombies found us, right? So I think about this a lot. I'm like, the only way to survive the zombie apocalypse is if we invite the zombies on. Like, we have to be prepared to scale the operation and share it with others. Like, I would want to be able to have seed to share with others, to be able to grow. Like, I want to figure out.
Zombies don't want corn.
Well.
Brains.
So assuming that I could convince them to go vegetarian. Sometimes I think about, like, what's the highest caloric return food that I've currently got on the farm that grows fairly foolproof, because that is, climate change is happening still, even though we started the farm to try to fix that, it's still happening. I don't know. Mike has been working on it, but, and so there's, you have to kind of, in my opinion, have a ton of different crops going at any given time, because some of them are gonna get clobbered any given year in a way you hadn't imagined. And so there's a certain resilience to the building, but I do think that we could grow enough calories for our family, but I would wanna figure out ways to be able to scale that to grow for the periphery, more the Camden. Yeah.
So Nicole, that was an excellent speech. I'm so excited. And so we have been friends for 29 years, which is insane.
Yeah.
I met you
Only
when I
35,
first.
how is that possible?
It's
I
weird.
know, you're in the room. So, as part of that usual suspects crowd, like, I love your passion on this. And like, it comes through, and I am such a fangirl for you. Every time we run into each other, I'm like, oh, farming questions. I have farming questions.
I love taking you around the farm.
I have
She
farming
has really
questions.
good questions. She's
And
a
like,
fun one to
because
do.
like at night, like when I am listening to all the awful news, and especially the last couple of weeks, like my happy place is much like with you, right? And I will go live out in rural farmland, and I will just sustain ourselves and my friends, and I'll. So my question is like, how much of your like brain power goes to, or what are your ideas around like being able to say goodbye to the corporate lifestyle and like somehow make it sustainable to just live with your family in the farmer lifestyle? And maybe it's not like scaling up to farmer's market, but like putting other creative things into the farms, that way you guys could just like
Never talk to another person.
Well, or have it be around talking to other people. Like, I think it would be through classes or some sort of on-farm stuff, and ramping up the market. But I hope that it's happening in the next 5 years. Like, that's my goal. Is to. I feel like every time craziness happens in the world, I'm like, that is not a financially responsible decision to make in the midst of the mayhem. But frankly, it'll always be mayhem, and there will be no sure thing about when the right time to jump. So I hope in the next 5 years, because also some of the things I want to do are going to require me to still be on the south side of 70. So I'm gonna need, I'm gonna need to be able to be physically active to make some of these things come true. So time's ticking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel that.
yeah.
Thank you, sir. Oh, did you?
I'll talk to her.
Okay.
All right, yeah, I definitely will talk to people about it.
Yeah, she would love, she's got resources, she's got a flyer,
I
she's got.
didn't make the flyer, but I will make the
It's a
flyer.
virtual flyer, it's a mental flyer, a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we're on a very strict schedule, but even so, I'm gonna say take a few minutes, use the bathroom, refresh your beverage or your food, and then we'll come back for our mystery guest, who's gonna do the second presentation. It might be you.